Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Steve Rempelos and the band, for that fanfare. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the ProRodeo Hall of Fame. I'm Mike Husband. I'm the executive director of the Hall. The Hall is the only heritage center in the world devoted exclusively to the sport of professional rodeo, and I'd like to extend a very warm welcome on behalf of the Hall staff to the Hall today and to this very, very special event. This is a very proud day for the Hall. It's a great moment for rodeo, and for those 6 rodeo greats who join 120 other legends as Hall of Famers this morning, we hope that this is their finest hour too, for them, for their families, for their friends. I would like to remind you that immediately following the proceedings this morning, we invite you to have lunch with us under the tent, courtesy of our friends at Original Coors. In just a moment, the Pikes Peak Range Rider pivots will post the colors. They're going to have to leave us a little early this morning to get to the rodeo grounds, but we appreciate their participation. Please remain standing following the presentation of the colors for the national anthem, which will be sung by Lila Moray. Following the anthem, Mike Spencer will give the invocation. Ladies and gentlemen, the Pikes Peak Range Rider pivots with the colors. Thank you very much, Pikes Peak Range Rider pivots. Ladies and gentlemen, our national anthem.
Please join me in singing our national anthem. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets ringing, the bombs bursting near, came through the night, that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, and home above brave.
Thank you, Lila. Please remain standing for the invocation. Mike Spencer.
Let's pray. Lord, we gather here this morning to honor these men and women as they are about to be inducted into this Hall of Fame, some who are present and some who are no longer with us, but all were dedicated to the great American sport of rodeo. Your word tells us in 1 Corinthians 9 that all compete to win the prize. But this beautiful Colorado morning, as we honor these people, let us not lose sight of the greatest prize of all, salvation in your Son, Jesus Christ. Bless us and be with us here today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Please be seated. Thank you, Mike. Thanks, Lila. Thanks, Pivots. We appreciate you being here this morning. And now, without further ado, I'm very pleased to present the Commissioner of Pro Rodeo, Commissioner Lewis Cryer.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What a beautiful morning. And we so appreciate all of you being here. This is a tremendous turnout. It's a tremendous tribute to those who are being inducted today. Last evening, I had the pleasure of hosting a dinner for the inductees, their families, and those who are very special to them. We shared some moments, we shared some thoughts, and we shared some tears. When you bring the very best of the very best together, there is a commonality among them that only they can share. And for those families who participate in their lives, they have a special understanding of what it takes to be a champion. The Hall of Fame is a collection of memories, is a collection of memorabilia, is a tribute to those who have done what no other have done. They've been selected by their peers and honored by their peers, and when that happens, it also takes on such a significant meaning. Today is a great day for the PRCA and its Hall of Fame. Not only are we inducting these people here today, but following these ceremonies, we are going to do a groundbreaking ceremony to kick off the public campaign. Construction starts this next week, and when we come back here a year from now, you'll have a Hall of Fame that's been expanded by 20,000 square feet. You'll have beautiful exhibit gardens, an educational center, and you'll have an expanded national office complex. Thanks to the dedication and interest of the people in the sport of rodeo, that's going to happen. And the reason for it is rodeo is well, and rodeo is strong. The greatest interest we've ever seen in the sport. As I, the commissioner, and representing the 10,000 members, we stand here to tell you today, it cannot get any better, we think, but it will be better the next time we come around here next year. And I invite you all back for that very special day when we have the greatest grand opening and reopening, an open house for the Hall of Fame and our next induction ceremonies. There was a group of ladies and women that we acknowledged last night. These are the mothers and the wives, in the case of one daughter, of our inductees today. We honor them because they give so much, and they understand greatly what it means to go down the road. They, more so than anybody else probably in this world, understand what it is to be behind their man, behind their mother, to see what it takes to be here today. You don't come here by happenstance. You come here because you're the best at what you do. As Michael mentioned earlier, there's less than 150 people honored here. The significance of that is just stated because there's only that many so far. And we're looking forward to honoring these ladies right now and to say publicly to them, thank you for sharing with us and the industry of rodeo, the man, the person in your life. And I would ask that you would stand as I read your name for a public acknowledgement of not only your support, but your contribution to the sport. Sharon Gjermundson, Jackie Gjermundson, Karen Rosser, Sunny Deb Backstrom in honor of her mother, Marge Greeno Henson, Nancy Henson, Olga Ward, Don Ward, and Norma Truan. Ladies, thank you very much. When we started these induction ceremonies again a few years ago, after a few years when we had no classes inducted, we decided one of the most important elements of the sport wasn't being recognized publicly, and that is the Rodeo Committee. You know, when you think about it, you can't have a rodeo without a Rodeo Committee. Those dedicated persons who work all year round for those of us to go during the battle of competition time to enjoy that city and to enjoy the experience of that rodeo. So we started recognizing those rodeo committees, and today we are here to recognize another one. And today we're going to recognize the Reno Rodeo, one of the original July 4th rodeos. The Reno Rodeo began in 1919 at Stringacre Gulch. By 1935, it was proclaiming the world's richest rodeo in the West, a title still used today. In 1937, the committee organized a nonprofit corporation as the Reno Rodeo and Livestock Association. In 1987, the corporation reorganized as the Reno Rodeo. The Reno Rodeo has served over the years as one of the finest, most popular community events in northern Nevada. Today, the ProRodeo Hall of Fame recognizes Reno Rodeo, Reno, Nevada, for its pioneering efforts, continuing support, and perpetuation of the sport of professional rodeo, presented this day, August 12, 1995. In response, Mr. Joe Martin, please.
Well, the first thing I have to do is put my glasses on so I can see what I'm reading. Second thing I'd like to do is publicly thank Bob Payne for nominating us. And Bob Payne's a good friend of mine, he's a good friend of Reno Rodeo, and a big supporter. Thank you very much, Bob. Of all the cowboys you see here, I'll tell you I'm the luckiest cowboy today. You see, I'm not standing up here because of anything I did. These Hall of Fame inductees, they've done something great. Me, I'm just lucky. I'm standing up here because of the great things many, many other people have done over the years to make the Reno Rodeo a great rodeo. I want to thank the ProRodeo Hall of Fame on behalf of those people. Let me tell you something about these folks. They're real rodeo people. They're down to earth, they're hardworking, and they're the backbone of the Reno Rodeo. Some of those people are here with me today. They're past presidents. And even the son of one of Reno Rodeo's founding fathers, Charles Mapes, is with us today. In 1919, 76 years ago, a handful of Reno businessmen decided to hold a rodeo. Reno only had 12,000 people at that time. They say the first rodeo brought 13,000 people to town. Well, Reno's always been overachievers. And a lot of people have contributed to the history of Reno Rodeo since the early success. They're volunteers, not paid a dime for their work. And every year, 350 of them put on a Reno Rodeo. They're at the gates, they're directing traffic, they're working admissions, they're working the chutes, they're everywhere. And it's because of their work they've done over the years that I'm lucky enough to be standing here today to accept this honor. There have been thousands of them, good folks who contributed their time and energy so that Reno Rodeo could be the wildest, richest rodeo in the West. Those volunteers have helped us to accomplish some important community work as well. Since 1988, the Reno Rodeo Foundation has existed as the charitable arm of Reno Rodeo. Just this year, we were able to give $75,000 in grants to local youth charities and $32,000 in scholarships to the students of University of Nevada, Reno. Now, there's another reason I'm the luckiest cowboy here today. The Reno Rodeo is a great deal to Cotton Rosser. For as long as I can remember, he's been bringing in the stock that contributes so much to the success of Reno Rodeo. It's an honor to share the podium with you today, Cotton, and thank you for all your work. I look at the Hall of Fame inductees here today, and I know most of them have been to the Reno Rodeo at one time or another. They remind me that there's some other folks that we need to thank today. Those are the cowboys and cowgirls who come to Reno every June for our rodeo. Each Reno Rodeo performance is a celebration of your skill, a celebration of your dedication, and a celebration of your courage. So to all of you, thanks. Keep coming to Reno Rodeo, and we'll promise to put on one hell of a rodeo for you. Those of us from the Reno Rodeo look at the short list of rodeos that have received this honor from the ProRodeo Hall of Fame. Calgary, Pendleton, Cheyenne, and others. We're honored to be among that group, and we promise you we won't be resting on our laurels. We'll be working hard to make the Reno Rodeo even better. So you can see why I think I'm the luckiest cowboy here today. I accept this honor on behalf of all those who have gone before me, and we say thanks to the Reno Rodeo Association. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you now the class of 1995 for Hall of Fame induction. Our first honoree today, Fritz Truin, all around. To make the introduction comments, Mr. Randy Whitty of Western Horsemen.
Fritz Truan is being inducted posthumously today as world champion all-around cowboy. He lived to be 29 years old, and in that time he became not only a great rodeo champion, but a devoted son, husband, and war hero who died fighting for his country. Frederick Truin was born November 12, 1915 at Sealy, California. His family moved to Long Beach, and that's where he attended school. He started cowboying on a ranch in the area part-time, and then his older brother Bill and he hit the rodeo trail locally at some small rodeos in the area. And his brother Bill was a steer wrestler. He died in a hunting accident in 1938. Fritz grew to be 6 feet tall and weighed 170 pounds. He was an athlete who possessed that determination and competitive spirit that is found in the hearts of all champions. He took rodeoing seriously and became a top saddlebrunt rider, bareback rider, and steer wrestler as well. Fritz was a member of the Cowboys Turtle Association and held card number 49 the year he won his first world championship in saddlebrunt riding. That was back in 1939, 7 years after Fritz had climbed on his first bucking horse. There was no national finals rodeo in those days, of course. The championship points were kept by the Rodeo Association of America. And the finale for each season was the big Madison Square Garden rodeo in New York City. Going into the big rodeo that year, Fritz was in close contention for the Saddlebrunt Riding Championship. Each man got 10 horses to ride, and after 9, Fritz was still too close on points to sit back and relax. So the championship in 1939 was going to go down to the last horse. For his last horse, Fritz drew one of the toughest horses in the history of rodeo, the great Hell's Angels, a once wild horse from Montana that many considered to be the toughest to ride of them all. Well, Fritz rode him. And the crowd cheered and the judges marked him, and he won that first championship in a very convincing style. He also finished the 1939 season as runner-up for the all-around championship. At the time, Fritz was the youngest rodeo champion. At the end of the season, he returned home to his mother and his sisters in Long Beach at the age of 24. 1940 was a big year for Fritz. He was in a close race for the all-around championship with Kid Fletcher. And the lead seesawed back and forth as the season went along. He won the Saddlebrunt Championship for the second time that year. And that was the year 1940 that Fritz became the world champion all-around cowboy. He won the all-around with help from some of the steer wrestling money he won, dogging off his good horse, Old Dan. And Fritz finished among the top 5 in bareback riding that year. Fritz had a lot of friends in rodeo. He was known as a fellow who liked a good joke, a big laugh. He was also known as a man who had a keen sense of justice. He never backed down from a fight, and he never picked a fight, his friends said. Well, in 1941, he finished second in the Saddlebrunt riding and third in the all-around. And he rode Hell's Angels again at Madison Square Garden to win another go-round there. That was also the rodeo he met his future wife, Norma Holmes, a trick rider from Oklahoma. Norma was performing her trick riding routine during one of the performances and riding her good Oklahoma star, yelling pell-mell down through the arena and around in the end of the arena down by the bucket chutes when something happened that just had never happened to her before. Both hands slipped from the saddle. And she fell flat on her back, and it knocked the wind out of her, and she kind of bounced and tumbled right up to the feet of one of the bronc riders who was waiting to ride there. And she heard a voice, kind of a kind, gentle voice come down, and it said, "Are you dead?" And it was Fritz Truan. Well, the rodeo season wound up, and on December 7th that year, the United States suddenly found itself at war. Fritz continued rodeoing in 1942, and romance blossomed between he and Norma Holmes. It was at the Chicago rodeo that year. She was horseback, just waiting to go on in a few minutes to perform a trick riding routine once again. And Fritz came up to the side of her and kind of took her hand and he slipped an engagement ring on her finger. And this was to a lady who abhorred the thought of doing any trick riding with any kind of a ring whatsoever on her hand. But she went out and performed flawlessly that day. They were married on September 6, 1942 at Norma's parents' ranch in Oklahoma. Fritz finished the year third for the bronc riding and seventh in all-around standings. His country had been at war for nearly a year by then, and Fritz just couldn't stand it any longer. He felt he just had to get into it and help his country win and so America could get on with its lives. And so he told Lauren, he said he had arranged to lease a ranch up by Cody, and this is where they would settle down together. And so after that, he went ahead and enlisted in the Marine Corps. After a year and a half of active duty with the Marines in the Pacific, Fritz returned home on leave. He had been wounded, he had suffered a bout of malaria, but he was recovering fast. And more importantly, he and Lorna were together again. It was the summer of 1944. And he entered some rodeos. Fritz won money in 3 events at Boulder, Ogden, Cheyenne, and San Francisco. Then he had to return to duty. Sergeant Truman led men into the Battle of Iwo Jima, and that's where he was killed on February 28, 1945. There's a famous photograph of a handful of Marines pushing a flagpole with the United States flag on top of it, pushing it up right atop Iwo Jima shortly after capturing the island. Everyone here knows the photo. The scene even became a national monument in Washington, D.C. Rodeo's Fritz Truman was one of the Marines who died for the capture of that island and the placement of that flag, all to help win World War II. We honor him today for his accomplishments in rodeo, but we can also be proud of the broader legacy he left behind. Through deeds that involve such things as love and honor and responsibility and courage, these are the foundations of a functional society. Historian Don Hedgepeth once wrote that perhaps the best tribute to Fritz Truman was the simplest, from his friend, the late bronc riding champion Gene Pruitt, who told how Fritz lived and died. Said Pruitt, "The boy never ducked an issue in his life." Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Bronc riding championship in 1944. Truman was killed in what was probably the most hotly contested area of Iwo Jima's campaign. The headlines of the day read, Sergeant Fritz Truman, once king of the cowboys, killed in Iwo action. Born Sealy, California, November 12, 1915, died Iwo Jima, February 28, 1945. Fritz Truman all around.
This is beautiful. I want to thank Randy. All the nice things he said, or a few things he could have left out. I hate for the world to know I would fall off when I was trick riding. This award would mean more to Fritz than any he could get because it's from ProRodeo. Our whole life was professional rodeo. We met at the professional rodeo in New York. Was engaged in a professional rodeo in Chicago. And that's why it means so much. I am so proud to be a member of the Professional Rodeo Association. Even I was a turtle member. And the pride is just great. I know that in this beautiful memorial building here, that in years to come, the rodeo fans who visit, that this memorial will always keep Fritz Truman alive. Also, my heart. Thank you.
Our next inductee, Ellen Backstrom, contract personnel. For the introduction, Don Harrington.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a sincere honor to be able to pay tribute today to Ellen Backstrom. It is a real honor to be part of the big picture of bringing Ellen into the Hall of Fame. And why Ellen? Why Ellen? Here is a lady that devoted her entire life and her family's life to professional rodeo. My first acquaintance with Ellen goes back many, many years ago when she and Marty were first courting. Marty was at the Montana rodeos as a contestant, and Ellen would just happen to show up at some of the rodeos, and what set off the relationship is that supposedly Ellen had lost her hat just as she was about to ride into the arena for a queen contest at Arlee, Montana. She lost her hat, and she hollered at Marty and says, "Give me your hat." And he did. And that hat lasted for about 30 some odd years, because that was the start of a very happy marriage and a life of rodeo that the two of them went on to for years and years. Ellen's background was one of being raised around the Ovando, the Missoula country, beautiful country in Montana. Her family was involved in the livestock business, the Rennell family, great people. And later, after marrying Marty, she did accounting work for a lumber company in Missoula. And then Sonny Deb came along to brighten their lives. Ellen timed at many rodeos. She was most efficient. And at that time, I was secretary and an announcement for old Zumwalt's company. Cowboys in those days would pay their entrance fees as they do today, right at grand entry time. It was like the code of the West. And Ellen was quick to see the problem. When she was timing, she'd step in and bail me out so I could go on with the presentation of the grand entry. My wife Shirley did this sometimes too. But before long, Ellen was secretary and timing. And this was the days before we had computers. Everything that a secretary did was written, typed, or was in her head. And Ellen, without a doubt, was one of the most gifted people, was most professional in her job, and she had a memory that was second to none. And I might say too, when the change of the computers came on, like so many of us in business today, it was a big major change, and Ellen was one of the first to push for it and accept it. She did quite a number of firsts. She was the first lady to serve on the board for the PRCA, and it was during her tenure that the decision was made to move from Denver to Colorado Springs for the PRCA's administration offices and also for the beginning of the Hall of Fame. Now, a lady elected to the board of the PRCA was just about unheard of. This was a sport controlled and run by men. But with the election of Ellen, times started changing. She was not a woman's liber, not at all. She was intelligent, common horse sense, and had the respect of everyone she came in contact with. The many rodeo committees she worked with couldn't praise her enough. The stock contractor she worked for gave her full rein because they knew she could deliver. We're talking about Cotton Rosser, Reg Kessler, Oral Zumwalt's company, Mike Serby, Harry Vogt, Neil Gay. They all had great respect whenever this lady worked for them. She had the ability to handle the problems when VIPs showed up. She had the ability to help a cowboy get to another rodeo, whether it was Jack Ward or Brad Germanson, or just a kid that just showed up. She even knew how to get Chuck Henson to ride in the parade with his mule. And that was pretty difficult. She had a special knack for handling the young cowboys coming into the sport. She would hear them out, give them advice. And if a young cowboy was a smart aleck, she had a very nice school teacher way of putting him in his place. And looking back at the rodeo she's secretaried over the years, from a humble start in Montana to Denver, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston, San Francisco, Omaha, Albuquerque, Reno, Red Bluff, San Angelo, Casper. These were just a few of the many rodeos that she worked year after year. She and Marty and Sonny often went different ways, as Sonny had come into doing secretarial work. Marty had given up the bareback riding and had a scoreboard traveling over the country. And Ellen said the separation always made us appreciate one another more. The national finals, she secretaried. She also handled the national college finals, the national high school championships. This was back in '73. She did that all in 1 year, along with about 40 other rodeos that she handled during the year. She worked the college national finals from 1970 and every year until 1988. She loved her work and she loved the sport. Fortunately for the rodeo business, Ellen brought Sonny Deb into the business, and at a very young age, Sonny was helping her mother in the rodeo offices all over the country. Like mother, like daughter. She couldn't have had a better teacher. And today, Sonny is serving this sport just as Ellen did. When cancer had Ellen bedridden, I last saw her at the hospital in Phoenix. She was in a coma, and they were trying to keep her as comfortable as possible. I asked the head nurse how Ellen was doing. The nurse told me, she says, she's a remarkable lady. And she always thanking us and telling us what a good job we were doing. That was Ellen. No one gave more time, more devotion and energy and loved the people more than this First Lady of Professional Rodeo. I know Ellen is looking down here today at this gathering, smiling in her own inimitable way. No longer is the cancer causing her suffering. She is at peace with the Lord. God bless you, Ellen Backstrom. We all love you so much. Thank you.
The plaque shall read, Ellen Backstrom, Contract Personnel. Known as the First Lady of Rodeo, Backstrom began her rodeo career as a very young child, singing during intermissions for her father's productions. After years spent as a bookkeeper, she decided to hit the barrel racing circuit. She filled in as a timer and rodeo secretary and found her true calling, becoming a full-time rodeo secretary in 1969. I realized I could make more in a month as a secretary than I could in a year as a contestant. Over the years, Backstrom worked for most of the big-name stock contractors. She secretaried Denver, San Antonio, Houston, Fort Worth, San Francisco, Albuquerque, Phoenix, and hundreds of small rodeos. In 1973, she was the rodeo secretary of the National High School Finals, the College National Finals, and the National Finals Rodeo. She was the NFR secretary a total of 4 times between 1973 and 1982. Backstrom is the only woman ever to serve on the association's board of directors, elected as a contract personnel director in the late 70s. She described herself as the vital link between the cowboys who traveled from rodeo to rodeo, the local rodeo committee, and the association office. Ellen Backstrom was considered more than that by her cowboy friends, who presented her with a world champion secretary buckle in 1984. Born Missoula, Montana, September 9, 1929, died March 22nd, 1988. Ladies and gentlemen, Ellen Backstrom, Contract Personnel.
On behalf of my dad, Marty, myself, and our family and friends, would first of all like to express appreciation to the selection committee for honoring my mother in this way. I need to make a special thanks to my best friends, Dawn and Terry Gay, for the nomination. I don't know how many of you know Donnie Gay. He called me yesterday afternoon to tell me how to do this. And he said, go up there, you take notes, and you "You know what you're going to say," he said, "but I want you to think of me when you start to get a lump in your throat." He said, "Right now I'm in Crosset, Arkansas. It's 200 degrees. I'm standing in my room in the Ramada Inn in my swimming trunks, and I'm a sex wagon." Well, I got written on the top of my sheet, "Donnie Gates, white legs," so if I choke, I'll read that and I'll be okay. There were 4 men that saw in my mother whatever that something is that it takes to make a great rodeo secretary. 3 of them are here today, and the 4th wishes he were. First of all, Don Harrington. Mother always gave credit where it was due, and she always made sure people knew that it was Don that started her. So I guess you would say Don showed her a door. The second man is Mr. Reg Kessler. He is also honored in this hall. Reg gave her her first bunch of rodeos and had faith in her, and she always appreciated that. So I guess you would say that Reg gave her the key to the door that Don showed her. The next man was Cotton Rosser. He's also being honored here today, as he should be. When we left Montana and went south, Mother said, "We'll never work another rodeo. Nobody knows me down there," and that was the end of the world to her. Well, within a few weeks, she and Daddy went to work for Cotton, and Cotton showed her a whole new world. More and bigger rodeos and a chance to make secretary a career instead of a weekend hobby. So I suppose you have to say Cotton opened the door that Don had showed her and Rich gave her the key to. The last man is Mike Serby. He couldn't be here today because we have a rodeo in Sydney, Iowa, but I know he's thinking about us. He's evidently not thinking about me as much as I thought he would. I thought the Marines would land in a helicopter and would take me back there because they couldn't do it without me. Evidently they can't. I would have to say Mike took Mother to that door that Don showed her and Reg gave her the key to, and Cotton opened, and he shoved her through. Mom worked her first rodeo for Mike in 1976 and continued until her death in 1988. And they had a mutual admiration and respect for one another that was uninterrupted for all those years. When Mother was in the hospital, before she died, she was more worried about not letting Mike down at the winter rodeos than she was about getting better. I need to tell you about this rodeo family. My mother was in the hospital for 153 days before she died. In 153 days, not one day went by that she did not get flowers, a card, a phone call, or a visit from a cowboy. And that kind of shows me the kind of love and respect that so many had for her, which is something she told me this business was all about. I wasn't going to mention it, but in 1987, when Lane Frost won his title, Lane walked out of the arena, down the hall, to the payphones by the dressing room, called my mother, said, "Ellen, this is Lane, I won the gold buckle," hung up, went back, and took his applause. Mom also told me if I wanted a secretary, there were 3 things I had to do regardless of any personal feelings I had. Be fair, be honest, and be dedicated. Mom was all of those. Before I step down, there's one more person that needs some recognition. They say behind every good man, there's a good woman. Well, that works both ways. My mother left us a little early, but she did leave knowing she was loved, because Daddy was right there to give her strength all the time. It's ironic today that the inductees, with the exception of Mr. Truin, who Mother never had the pleasure of meeting, were special people to her. Chuck Henson, well, Mother said he was the funniest man that ever put on baggy pants and walked into the arena. Cotton Rosser, Mother said he was one of the biggest assets to this rodeo business. He was the greatest showman she'd ever seen. Brad Gjermundson, she loved watching ride. She said he was probably one of the 3 classiest bronc riders she'd ever seen. Jack Ward, she thought he was just an all-around great guy, and he was one of those kind of guys that do anything she asked him, with the exception of leaving T.J. Walsh was at home when he came to a rodeo. Mom was on the board when the inception of the hall was introduced, and she's very dedicated to seeing it become a reality. But I can promise you, it never, ever crossed her mind that one day we would all be here honoring her. Well, Mom, we're here. You deserve it. You're a champion. Thank you.
Our next inductee, Chuck Henson, contract personnel. The introduction remarks will be made by a Hall of Famer himself, Mr. Jack Roddy. Jack?
Thank you, Commissioner Pryor, ladies and gentlemen. When Chuck called me 2 months ago to introduce him here, I was sure proud to be able to speak in his behalf, and especially proud of this hall. Chuck Henson was born at a rodeo in 1931 in the state of Florida. 2 months later, he traveled to Red Lodge, Montana, where he was raised. After a hitch in the Army, he attended the University of Arizona, where he competed in all the contested events, plus wild horse race. He started a 35-year career of fighting bulls. He fought bulls at every major rodeo in the United States and Canada, including the famed Calgary Stampede. Chuck Henson's heritage goes way back. His mother, Marge Greeno, who's with us here today, Aunt Alice and Uncle Turk Greeno, had all won World Saddlebrunt Riding Championships. His cousin, Deb Greeno, was a world champion bareback rider in 1993. Chuck's father, Heavy Henson, was a top steer wrestler in the 30s into the mid-50s. His daughters, Jane and Leanne Henson, compete at PRSA rodeos today in the barrel racing and team roping. Millions of rodeo fans over a 35-year career were entertained by Chuck Henson, and countless bull riders were protected by him. His dedication to the sport was his top priority as he served on the PRSA Board of Directors as a contract representative. Chuck Henson served from 1971 to 1974 when the plans for this hall were started. He retired at the Tucson Fiesta de los Vaqueros in 1980 from the rodeo arena. Besides a rodeo career where in 1 year he worked 40 rodeos and 175 performances, Chuck started working in the movie industry, where today he still can be seen in many westerns. He was a stunt double with Ben Gazzara, Slim Pickens, and many other movie stars. Behind every good man is a good woman. And Chuck's lovely wife, Nancy, who was probably funnier than Chuck Henson, made a rodeo family that was loved and respected by all. 35 years happily married. Chuck didn't need grease paint and baggy pants to be funny. To make you laugh, he was naturally funny, and one of the greatest bullfighters ever, following in the footsteps of his idols, the great Holman Holcomb, George Mills, and Slim Pickens. From the family of legends, another legend, my friend Chuck Henson.
Jack?
The plaque shall read, Chuck Henson, contract personnel. Chuck Henson was born with the rodeo blood in his veins, the son of one of the riding Greeno girls and a bulldogger. He actually was born when his parents were competing at a Florida rodeo. Henson was a 5 man during his contestant years, although he considered bull riding his forte. His contestant years ended in the mid-50s when his clown bullfighter career took off. From then until the 80s, he made people laugh and saved cowboys from disaster weekly. Henson, named as a bullfighter at the 1967 and 1971 NFRs, also served on the association's board of directors as contract member director from 1974 to 77. When Henson hung up his baggy pants and red wig, he took on Hollywood as a stuntman and double. Of his career, he says, "It made me feel mighty good when some kid who got a bad bull drawn said, 'Boy, I'm glad to see you here.'" Born Arcadia, Florida, February 4, 1931, Chuck Henson, contract personnel.
Thank you, Wilson. Needless to say, this is probably the proudest day of my life. But I do want to make one apology. I want to apologize to everybody here for having Jack Roddy come up here and perjure himself. Also, I want to thank Donna for staying home and doing all the work so Jack can come over here and lollygag around today. She's branding, dehorning, and everything out there in California, bless her heart. she's a lot prettier than him too, so I'd kind of like to have her up here, but I didn't have my choice. If I have kind of a strained look, you know, up here, it's because this honor hasn't really sunk in yet. Kind of have that dazed look, the same one I had on that wedding picture I had. I knew it was something great, but it just hadn't focused yet. And I want to thank my mom, my dad for raising me, and especially in the rodeo business. And I want to thank my wife, Nancy, for putting up with me all these years, and staying home doing work, and raising the kids. She did a real good job. A couple of pretty good kids. I guess they've done some things I don't know about, but I hear some snickers every now and then. But I'm sure proud of my family, all of them. And I'm especially proud of being here with all these inductees today. And also I'm proud to say that I knew Fritz and Ellen very well. And it's kind of chokes you up here, you know. But I don't want to make a big long speech here, but I do want to say a couple of things. I was at a rodeo in Billings, Montana one time, and it rained really bad up there, and there's water and mud everywhere. I was clowning. And right out between the bucking chutes and grandstand was a huge swale of about 2 foot deep of water. And I was down there trying to stay dry, you know, because I didn't want to get my body exposed to the mud and the elements. And I looked around, and here come these 2 cowboys. Had white jackets on, and their good dress pants and tie, and their good hats, and they were kind of tippy-toeing across this arena, like trying not to step in any little mud holes. So it was John W. Jones and Jack Roddy. I just couldn't stand it. So I ran up behind them, and I just jumped in the air, and I came down, splash, that water splattered. Well, I turned around, the crowd was laughing and giggling. Well, my mistake was I didn't break and run. I mean, just turn around like a bear had me right there. These 2 big brutes picked my little scrawny body up above their head, walked about 20 yards over here to the deepest part of the water, and just launched me. I went completely under, you know, just like a drowned rat. So that was, I knew I'd get even someday. So one time I was thinking, well, I better try to tune up my bulldogging a little bit. I'd like to go to one of those good bulldogging schools, and I couldn't make my mind up which one I'd go to, so I did a lot of research. And with the help of one of my photographer friends who was at the Cow Palace that fall, I got these pictures of these 2 world champion bulldoggers showing their best form. And I don't think you can all see this, but I am going to hold them up. The first one is Jack Roddy jumping right in front of the chutes. I don't even see a steer in the picture. Oh yeah, there's one there. And here is John W. Jones jumping at the same steer, different day, I think. I don't know. Anyhow, I spent a lot of time and effort trying to copy this, and I finally did. I got this down pretty pat. I did that quite a bit. I didn't make a lot of money, but I didn't have a very long way to walk back to the chutes either after that. So I'm not going to take up much more time, but I do want to thank all the people that came here today, and especially the ones that nominated me. And I've got so many wonderful friends here. They say that your wealth is not really told by the amount of dollars you have, but by the number of friends. And the way I feel today, I could probably buy the world and put a down payment on the moon. Thank you.
What's wrong, Jack? He knew this was coming. A lot of things have been said up here today remind me a lot of the next inductee, Jack Ward Jr. Sonny, you said something about your mother wanting Jack to leave me home. Well, he couldn't. Jack didn't know how to enter. He couldn't remember what horses were. Randy, you said something about Mr. Truman being 6 foot tall and 170 pounds. Well, Jack's about 6 foot tall. He used to weigh 170 pounds, but he's doing okay. Jack has been very blessed over the years with a great family. Jack's whole family's here. His mother, Olga, his dad, Jack Sr., all 3 sisters, his brothers, Dawn, his wife's sisters are here, many friends, the Garretts from Arkansas, the Platzes from Lyman, Wyoming. That's the good side of Jack's rodeo career. The bad side were his traveling partners, J.C. Trujillo, Scotty Platz, and myself. Not many people were blessed like that, or whatever you want to call it. Jack called me about 2 months ago. We were talking about other things, and then he said, TJ, I want you to do my introduction into the hall, if you would. He said, you know more about me than anybody. We traveled together, hell, we lived together for years in Stephenville, when we both had tried a trial. We'd been married, and then we ended up in Stephenville. I don't know what you call those, but anyway, when he asked me, it was silent for quite a little spell there, and I started laughing, and so did Jack. He said, what do you think? I said, Jack, there's not very much I can tell about you in mixed company. He said, I know that. And he said, what little you can tell, you were part of it, so you better be careful. Anyway, Jack was like a lot of us. I was born and raised on a farm in Iowa, had 12 brothers and sisters. Jack had 6 brothers and sisters. His dad was a machinist in Odessa, Texas. He took up rodeo to get away from the machine shop, as I did to get away from the farm in Iowa. And so Jack started out in '69, became the college champion, and then went on to the pros like a lot of us. We went through the high school, college, and then into the pro ranks. And somehow or another, Jack Ward, Scotty Platz, J.C. Trujillo, and I got together in the early '70s. Well, we decided to travel together, and we borrowed Mrs. Ward's car. We were going to bring it back in a week. Jack's car was broke down. I think it's something as simple as the alternator going out. About 3 months later, we still had this Wildcat Buick, and it was the biggest, fastest running car I'd ever been in my life. I think to today it's the fastest car I've ever in. Passed everything on the highway but the gas stations. Well, we rodeoed all summer long, and that month of August that year was about the last month we had that car, and it was phenomenal. JC, Jack, and I, we were all bareback riders in every rodeo. I would say 95% of the rodeos. We won all 4 monies. We were so hot, it was unreal. We were at Kennewick, Washington, and T.R. Wilson was over there, and he said, guys, I need to ride Bremerton the next night. It was only a couple hundred miles. And, well, we made room for Jack, for T.R. Wilson, because we always had this cooler in the back seat between the 2 guys in the back. And, of course, that cooler, you know, it was full of nutritious health uses and things like that. Depending on what was in that cooler, depending on whether we were trying to build ourselves up or tear ourselves down on any given day. Well, we got to Bremerton, the rodeo was over, we won all 4 monies. TR came over there. He was talking to Jack. I'd gone somewhere to do something. He wanted to stay in that car. And Jack was a pretty nice guy. He was trying to be political or whatever. In a nice way, tell TR we didn't have room for it. And I come walking up. Jack turned around and said, ask TJ. And so TR did. And I said, well, TR, I said, it's like this. I said, in order for you to get in that car, we got to throw that cooler out. We're not going to do that. And I said, besides, they only pay 4 monies at these rodeos, and you aren't going to win anything. So we went on to Inductees, Wyoming, left for TR in Bremerton, Washington. Well, after, as I mentioned earlier, we tried those trial marriages, I guess. Jack and I both ended up in Stephenville, Texas together. And one winter, J.C. Trujillo come down there that first winter, and he stayed with Jack and I. And it was that first week, we took turns cooking. Well, the first day, I like to cook. J.C. likes to cook. I cooked chicken, fried steaks, all the fixings, everything. We ate dinner. Went to Fort Worth rodeo that night. Well, the next day, J.C., he baked chicken, did all that. We went to rodeo. Third day was Jack's turn. It wasn't 5 minutes. Jack said, soup's on. walked out there and it was a loaf of bread, a jar of mayo, a head of lettuce, a tomato, bologna, and cheese. I said, what's this? He said, well, you take this bread, and you do this, and you do that. He said, and you put it in that microwave, and zap a hot sandwich. Well, from then on, Jack was a dishwasher. We never, ever let him cook again. But Jack, as great a bareback rider and bull rider as he was, it's really phenomenal. He could not remember a horse. He could be on a horse on Sunday and win first. And we'd go to rodeo on Thursday and that same horse, he said, what's this? He couldn't remember. So I did all the entering. And we were going back from Tulsa one year, back home to Stephenville. Jack was driving. He said, when are we going to work Vernon, Texas? And I opened up the sports news. It was about 11 o'clock in the morning. I closed the sports news and I said, Jack, why don't we just take a couple of days off to go fishing? And he said, hell, TJ, just 100 miles from home. He said, let's work Vernon. I said, Jack, we need some time off. He said, no. He said, we'll take some time off and then have a rodeo in Seattle or somewhere. We'll go fishing there. I said, well, I said, Jack, I said, actually, the books at Vernon closed an hour ago. What is that quick? Jack said, why don't we take some time off this week? So we went fishing, you know. He was always pretty quick with it. One of the stories that Scotty Glass, JC, and I always loved to tell about Jack was the year he did make it to the national finals in bull riding one year. Jack was probably a better bull rider than he was a bareback rider, but he was a lot like a lot of us guys that did ride bulls that liked to ride bareback horses a lot better. So anyway, he made the bull riding, and he'd done pretty well for his 3 or 4 bulls. He might have won a couple rounds that year. I think he did. Anyway, he didn't want to get on that last bull. No way. He was beat up and sore. He'd been on 10 bareback horses, 9 bulls. So Scotty and JC and I talked him into getting on that bull. And of course, we were done now. We'd been on all 10 horses, and we were at the old Morris Coliseum there in Oklahoma City. So we were down there at the Pierce. Hate to say it, but we come back and we were going to help Jack. So here JC, Scotty, and I, we talked him into getting on this bull. He really wasn't going to get on him, but he got on him. The bull's name was Barfly, if I remember right, at Rodeo Incorporated. It fit with the way JC and Scotty and I were at the moment. But Jack gets on this bull and he bucked him off and he hung up and he beat him half to death. And you know to today he still blames us 3 for that. It's not fair to me. Well, Jack and I, we've been around each other, traveled together for many, many years. And I love to hunt and fish. I'm outdoors all the time. Jack's idea of roughing it's a motel without carpet. He's not an outdoors person. So one year we were at Scotty Glass's place in Lyman, Wyoming. We all went fishing a bunch of us, and Jack stayed in town. We didn't find out till sometime later he'd gone and got himself an afro hairdo. He never knew that we had pictures of it. I wished I had one today. You should see Jack Ward with one of those. He stayed there and had it washed out that day. By 1981, Jack and I went to Canada to work the winter rodeos in Canada, medicine hat for Mr. Kessler, and the winter Calgary rodeo, and Edmonton. And while we were up there, I met a young lady. Her name was Dawn Van Port, I believe. Wasn't that your last name? I didn't remember. And I called Jack. I said, Jack, you got to come over here and meet this girl. We were all staying at Al Sewell's house somewhere down the street. Well, this is 10 in the morning. Jack shows up quite a while after dark 30. They'd been to the pool hall all day. Now, I'll end this part of the story by saying Dawn was not at all impressed with Jack Ward the first time she met him. Well, 3 or 4 days later, she decided to give him a second chance and invited us over to dinner, and they was going to cook dinner. So we were sitting there, and the telephone rang, and everybody was busy. So I picked up the phone, and this man said, hello. He said, is Dawn Ward there? Ward, he started his mouth. Is Dawn there? And I said, yes, she is. I said, who is this? He said, this Terry Bradshaw. He was a Dawn had dinner with her one time. She was an airline stewardess. I said, well, Mr. Bradshaw, I said, it's kind of like this. I said, my friend Jack Ward's going to start taking Dawn out, and she really doesn't want you to call her anymore, and I hung up. She didn't know that for a long time, but Dawn you really owe me a favor, because if you watch that guy on television now, he belongs in a rubber room. He really does. You know, on NFL. One story I have to tell about Don. We were on the way to rodeo. It was in the middle of the night somewhere, and I'm glad you reminded me of this story last night, Don. I hear the brakes wheeling, and I hear this ding, 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 and the pickup stops, and I hear this clunk. I'm in the back, asleep, and I look through the crawl-through, and the arm of the railroad track is right in front of the windshield, lights flashing. I looked out the side window, and right there was the train. Jack was in front. He said, Don, Jack was very patient. Now he was trying to impress this girl, right? He said, I think you might ought to put her reverse and back up real quick. She backed up, and that arm just scraped all the paint off. Like that. You stock contractors that are here today, Neil, Cotton, Reg, and your rodeo committee. Now you know why sometimes some of us had to turn out at certain rodeos. I'm not sure, had we made it to that rodeo, we could have found enough clean clothes in that pickup to present it ourselves. We could have drove to New York and back, round trip, non-stop, and never went to sleep after that. Needless to say, Don's driving was about that much from then on. He said, no, you stay over there, Don, we'll drive. Jack and Don's courtship took a total of 9 weeks. We were in Elton, Missouri, and Jack says to me, he says, TJ said, we're going to get married, Don. Is there with you? Okay. He said, now look, he said, that first time I did this, he said, Scotty Platts was the best man. He said, you were the groomsman. He said, that didn't work out well. He said, so this time I'm going to switch it. See if it works a little better. So we did. We went to Canada, and Jack's dad and brothers couldn't get away to go to his trial marriage. But Mom and the girls were all there. So we're in Calgary, and Jack didn't know that his dad and brothers were on the way. Scotty and I did. Knocked at the door to the hotel and opened the door, and there stood Mr. Ward and Gary and James. And, I mean, it was a pretty sentimental moment for quite a while. Jack said, God, Dad, he said, I'm glad to see you. What are you doing here? And he said, well, Jack, and he's got that really deep voice, if you know Mr. Ward Sr. And he said, by God, he said, we sent Ma and the girls to Arkansas, and that one didn't work. He says, me and the boys come up here to make sure this one sticks. Well, you did a good job, Mr. Ward, because it has. It's been a great relationship. Dawn's gray hair, it's premature, you guys. She's not nearly as old as she looks. Jackie is. With that, I want to introduce to you folks one of the best friends I ever had. He's a college champion. He's won individual rodeo awards that are too numerous to mention. He served as a bareback riding director on the board of directors. He competed at 11 national finals in the bareback riding, 1 in the bull riding, won 3 NFR averages in the bareback riding, and 2-time world champion, Jack Ward Jr.
The plaque shall read, Jack Ward Bareback. Jack Ward began his rodeo career as a bull rider, winning the 1969 National Intercollegiate Rodeo Association Championship. He qualified for his first NFR in bareback in 1972 and went on to a total of 11 appearances at the Rodeo's World Championship. Those 11 trips gave him 2 bareback championships and 3 NFR average wins. During his riding career, Ward was known as a kind of a cowboy who excelled when the competition was at its toughest. He served as the bareback director on the Association Board of Directors from 1977 to 79, where he worked diligently to keep professionalism in the event a priority. Ward never traded his rigging. Ward never traded in his rigging when he retired from the arena. He just used it as a prototype for his rodeo equipment company. His quote, "My ultimate goal in life and in rodeo is to leave this earth and not have one enemy. I believe if I can do that, I'll have been successful." Born Caldwell, Kansas, May 21, 1948. World champion bareback 1977, 1978. Ladies and gentlemen, Jack Ward Bareback.
morning. It's quite an honor to be up here. Only in America could a guy that's trying to stay away from a steady job be honored such as this. I do want to thank my family. They're all here today, and a lot of them came quite a distance to be here. My mom and dad, bless their heart, I don't know how they managed to pay all those entry fees and to raise 7 children, but they got through it somehow, and all of us turned out pretty good, I believe. So, and my sisters, bless their heart, they used to make shirts for us boys so that we'd all be dressed just like when we went to rodeo. I remember times that they'd be in the back seat putting those snaps on the shirts so that we could wear them that night. So I really want to thank those girls for all that they did for us. And you know, my dad, he always said, son, you need 2 events. I was a bull rider. He kept telling me, he said, son, you need 2 events. I believe he could see the handwriting on the wall that he knew I was never going to be a bull rider. It was just, you know, pretty plain to see. And so he encouraged me to ride bareback horses. He really wanted me to succeed in the rodeo business. And one reason is I think he wanted to get me out of that machine shop so I wouldn't tear anything else up. But after I got my permit and went to rodeo in PRCA, I couldn't have made it through that first year, I don't believe, without the help of some guys that are not real well known. There were guys like Ronnie Rogers. I grew up with Ronnie in Odessa, but he was a few years older than I was, and he was rodeoing. And Ronnie Rogers helped me a lot that first year. I believe I'd have had to give it up and go back home if it hadn't been for Ronnie. And then there was guys like Harold Henson, Leonard Lancaster, and Royce Rogers. Royce, he worked for Jigs Butler for a while, and then he had kind of quit when I came on the scene, but he had a place there in Iowa Park. And Royce, every time I'd come by there, I'd be broke. So he'd give me a place to stay. He'd work me, but he fed me, he paid me, I'd make enough entry fees to go again. And then friends like Frog and Belle Garrett out there in Springdale, Arkansas, we would come by their place, me and TJ and Scotty and all of us. I don't care what time of the day or night it was, Belle would have food on the table and a bed ready for us. So thank you, Belle. You've been wonderful. There's so many people that helped me get to where I am today. And TJ was right. I wasn't a real good businessman. I didn't really enjoy calling and entering and everything. And I figured if I just kind of hung around that they would do it. Besides that, most of the time I was furnishing a car. So they knew that if I didn't get entered, then I wouldn't be going. So they would enter, we'd all pile in and go. But there's one guy that really stuck with me through the thick and thin, and that was Scotty Plants. Now there was a guy that he would jump up out of bed in the mornings, and if he couldn't get the rest of us up, he'd gather up our dirty clothes and he'd go down there and do the laundry for everybody. Or else he'd take the car down to the gas station and just, get the oil changed. Scotty, he was a worker, but he was a little hyperactive also. I mean, that boy, he just could not lay in that bed. He had to be up and doing something. But Scotty was killed a few years ago in a oil field accident. But it's quite an honor, and I wanted to thank Commissioner Pryor and all the people in the hall for putting this together and for nominating me for the bareback riding inductee this year. Thank you.
Our next inductee, Brad Germanson, Saddlebrunt, with the introduction remarks, Rodney Nelson.
For those of us from North Dakota, there was never any doubt in our minds that Brad Gjermundson would be a great athlete someday. Well, at the start or early on, we just didn't know if it was going to be in rodeo or maybe basketball or something like that. But when he decided to pursue a bronc riding career, there's lots of people that threw their support behind Brad Gjermundson. We didn't really give him financial support or anything like that. We gave him what we thought Brad needed most, lots of advice. And his successes in rodeo came in rapid succession. He was a high school and collegiate star. He was a North Dakota amateur champion, Saddlebrunt Rookie of the Year, and World Champion, all within just a few years. By the time Brad won his 4th World Championship, most of us agreed that Brad would, by God, soon get the hang of it. I wonder how many satellite dishes were sold in North Dakota just with the excuse that, by golly, now we can watch Brad at the NFR. And it became almost a tradition. And then you'd find somebody that had a dish and everybody gathered together, and we expected to see old Brad at that NFR, and we got a lot of pleasure, a lot of enjoyment out of seeing our man compete down there at the NFR. So it was a bit of a disappointment. All of a sudden he quit showing up down there a few years ago. Really, everybody's asking, what's happened to Brad? What's wrong? So I took it upon myself about a year ago, and I called him up and I said, you know, Brad, I said, you could be as great as you ever were. I said, there's no reason why you couldn't be as good as you were in 81 and 83. I said, but face the facts, you're 35 years old, you're not a kid anymore. And I said, by golly, maybe it's time you put in a little road time, get a little physical fitness routine going, and put yourself back into shape. I know you can do it. Well, by golly, he said, Rod, I believe you're right. I'm going to have to try something. So after his fabulous 1994 NFR, I called him and congratulated him. I said, Brad, you look as great as you ever did. By golly, that physical training must have really paid off. Well, he said, I really didn't do a whole lot. I said, didn't you do any running? No, I said, I never ran anything. I didn't do a whole lot. By golly, he said, I did do a few push-ups or sit-ups. So. Great, I said, how many are you doing, Brad? Well, he said, just one every morning when I get out of bed. Well, the advice, I guess, and the support did go both ways. I remember a couple of years ago I called him and I said, you know, Brad, I said, I've got a good notion. I said, to lose 25 pounds, go to one of your bronc riding schools just to freshen up a little bit and see if I could become the oldest guy in history to win the world. I said, what do you think my chances are, Brad? Well, Rod, he said, I think you've got a real good chance of losing that 25 pounds. You know, Brad is a household word in North Dakota. There's lots of Brads, but he's the Brad. When somebody says, how's Brad doing, everybody knows who you're talking about. Most of us would rather be able to ride one great horse the way Brad Gjermundson rides him than be governor of North Dakota. Strangely enough, around Marshall, North Dakota, he is probably best known as an operator of haying equipment. They claim that Brad can run a hay outfit faster, do less work, break more stuff, and fix less than anybody in the country. Probably one of the true marks of a real cowboy. You know, maybe one of the things we like best about him is, by God, we still got him. He's Marshall, North Dakota, Brad Gjermundson. He hasn't moved away to Oklahoma or Texas or places that people go to. He's still there. We still have him. We're proud of him, and we want to have him for all time. I guess maybe the only exceptions to that would be those people who are unfortunate enough to draw him as a team-roping partner now and then. You know, we are truly, I am really truly honored, Brad. This is the greatest honor I've ever had to make this little introductory talk for you. We are proud, all of North Dakotans are proud, your family and neighbors are proud, and especially us Norwegian North Dakotans are proud that the ProRodeo Hall of Fame has decided to honor Brad Gjermundson, not just as a great bronc rider this time, but truly as one of the great bronc riders of all time. We congratulate you on the success you've had as a bronc rider. We look forward to lots more success in the future. We hope to get lots more use out of those satellite bases in western North Dakota. I called Clint Johnson a couple days ago and I said, Clint, you know, could you give me some advice on what to say here? And he said, buddy Billy, he said, Brad is a great friend. And you tell those people, by God, that Brad is the best. And for me to say anything else, I really can't say anything other than ditto. Congratulations, Brad, and by God, if you just get into shape, I believe you can be back here one more time.
The plaque shall read, Brad Germanson, Saddlebrunt. Brad's ability and dedication to the sport began as soon as he entered his first junior rodeo. He was named PRCA Saddlebrunt Rookie of the Year in 1980. The next year, he won the World Championship in his event and never looked back. After I won my first World Championship, I continued to set that as my goal every year. He qualified for the NFR 8 straight years during the 80s. And in 1994, after a 5-year absence, doing all right. Born Richardson, North Dakota, March 25th, 1959. World Champion Saddlebrunt, 1981, 1983, 1984, 1985. Brad Germanson, Saddlebrunt.
Well, first of all, due to the heat here this morning, I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible. Professional rodeo has always been a big part of my life. From when I was a youngster, I remember getting autographs, cutting out pictures, watching the finals on TV of all the great and many cowboys which are here in the hall and many who are present today. This is truly a great honor to be selected as one of the best of the best. I just want to thank all my family, friends that are here to share this special day with me and have supported me over the years. Thank you very much.
Our next inductee, Cotton Rosser, stock contractor. To make the introduction remarks, Bob Payne.
Cotton, this is your kind of deal. We got pretty ladies, we got a band playing, and a full house, not enough seats in the house. It's a real pleasure and honor to be asked by Cotton Rosser to introduce him today. It is also pretty easy to introduce someone who everybody in the rodeo world already knows. I've known Cotton as a friend and business associate for over 25 years. I will always be indebted to him for my involvement with the great sport of pro rodeo. I'd like to take just a few minutes to give you a little background on Cotton. He began with a handicap early on when his parents named him Horton Alexander Rosser. When you start out with Horton Alexander, things just have to get better. Growing up, Cotton delivered newspapers on a burro around his native Long Beach. Can you just picture Cotton on a burro? While in high school, he began riding in rodeo events and rounding up cattle on Santa Catalina Island. While attending Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, he caught the rodeo bug. Became involved with the National Intercollegiate Rodeo Association and was very successful. Cotton has competed in almost all rodeo events, including saddlebrunt, bull riding, calf roping, and steer wrestling. He entered and won steadily at rodeos, all across the United States and Canada, including the largest rodeo at that time, Madison Square Garden. Cotton was on his way to becoming a world's champion. Then came the event that would change Cotton's life forever. Cotton was using a tractor with a post hole digging attachment in his ranch in Marysville. He did what became typical Cotton. He jumped in with both feet. This incident caused compound fractures to both legs and crushed his ankles. But as Cotton will tell you, that was about the best thing that ever happened to him. The incident caused him to change his direction, but not his destination. With 2 broken legs, no insurance, and no income, Cotton's friends put on a benefit rodeo that helped pay his bills and open a western wear shop. A year later, he bought the Flying U Rodeo Company, and he's been in the stock contracting business ever since. That was in 1955. Today, Cotton Rosser is one of the largest and finest stock contractors in the country. He is without a doubt ProRodeo's most colorful showman. His outstanding opening ceremonies are used at many of the top PRCA rodeos, including the last 9 years at the National Finals Rodeo in Las Vegas. Your program calls him the P.T. Barnum of the rodeo world. I don't think anybody will argue that description. Cotton has always worked hard to produce the best and most colorful shows possible for the fans in the seats. He's also found time to become involved in the management of the PRCA, serving 6 years on the board of directors, 8 years on the Rodeo Committee Executive Council. Cotton was also named Stock Contractor of the Year in 1985. Cotton's whole life has revolved around the rodeo business and his family. I'm sure they often wondered which one came first. He is blessed with a hardworking and talented partner, his wife, Karen. I'd like to take just a minute and introduce Karen. Stand up, Karen. You need to take a bow. Putting up with Cotton all these years. One of Cotton's favorite sayings is, you don't make any money in the rodeo business, but you make $1 million worth of friends. In Cotton's case, that has to be at least $10 million worth of friends. I'm very happy and privileged to consider myself one of them. Cotton has given his whole life to the rodeo business. And now the rodeo business has the opportunity to give something back. Please welcome Cotton Rosser as the newest inductee into the ProRodeo Hall of Fame. Cotton Rosser.
The plaque shall read, Cotton Rosser, Stock Contractor. Today's rodeo world knows Cotton Rosser by his spectacular opening ceremonies at rodeos on the West Coast and for many years at the National Finals Rodeo. This P.T. Barnum of rodeo searches out ideas from sources as remote from the sport as ice shows and circuses, looking for that something special he can add to his productions. The other side of Rosser is his history as a top cowboy who started competing in all rodeo standard events as a teenager, then as a member of the Cal Poly University San Luis Obispo, California rodeo team, and finally winning buckles, saddles, trophies, and among other titles all around at the 1951 Cow Palace. Rosser purchased the Flying U Ranch in 1956, which is now the oldest continuing rodeo livestock company in the United States. The Flying U produces over 50 rodeos a year, including the Reno Rodeo and the Grand National at the Cow Palace, and operates a successful bucking horse breeding program. Flying U bucking stock shows up perennially in the NFR shoots. His quote, rodeo is a labor of love. A love of going down the road and meeting people and seeing wonderful things. I haven't made a lot of money, but I've made $1 million worth of friends. Born Long Beach, California, August 5th, 1928. 1985 Stock Contractor of the Year. PRCA Board of Directors 87, 88, 90, 91, and 92. Ladies and gentlemen, Cotton Rosser, Stock Contractor.
of tea. Usually I do all the hollering and not too much slow talking, and they told me, for harmony's sakes, talk slow. Well, thank you, and I'm here today. It's a wonderful honor to look amongst all my friends. All of you here, what a great afternoon. I'll hurry along. Bob Payne, I want to talk about him a second. Bob Payne, we got started 25 years ago. He's the best ticket seller in the whole world. He can sell more tickets to rodeo. He has the claim, TJ, of overselling the Rose Bowl in Pasadena and having refunds and only putting up $100 prize money. Bob Payne also has a favorite saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And he also had another good saying, it ain't too bad to make a profit. And I think that's something we all need to make in the rodeo business. As I look back at this hall, I think of what happened in 1984 and 1985. And I'd sure like to, when our troubled times and we were having the transition in the PRCA, I'd like to thank Harry Vold, Sean Davis, Bob Payne, and Ellen Evans for working so hard for a year to keep this association going and keeping this wonderful hall opening so Neil Gay and the rest of us all could make it here. To talk about friends in rodeo, I've had a lot of them. One of them was the great Benny Binion. He always said, Cotton, don't follow an empty wagon. Nothing ever falls out of an empty wagon. And I've had a whole lot of wagons I followed, but most of them have been full of wonderful people that have helped me with my work along the way. Number one, the great Ed Rutherford, who kept us going for Lex and I for so many years. We tried to, Lex Conley's another great friend. We tried to be the ringling brothers of the rodeo business, and we did a great job, but we didn't come home with too much wampum at the end of the year. Of course, my other friends, the Mac Borwich, Don Harrington, Michael Gong, who's taken a great position in Las Vegas, filling Benny Binion's shoes, Clarence Minetti, Cecil Jones, Dick Smith. And of course, when I look up at the champ up here, I think of when I was in a wheelchair with two broken legs, and the champ, Casey Tibbs, and Billy Ward had a match bronc riding, Leonard Block and the great Dean Oliver, and Ben Johnson had a match calf roping in Yuba City and raised enough money to bail me out of the hospital because we didn't have any insurance in those days. So I owe a lot to those people, and as Bob said, those people that I've met throughout the years, and when I got hurt and was laying in that hospital, even the Cal Poly Jack Rod, even the Rodeo Club sent me money, Red Bluff Roundup sent me money. I didn't realize how many friends I had till I was in the hospital with two broken legs. And like Marty and Ellen, all those things, sometimes those things bring a great feeling to you. But without all this would be my rodeo committees. Man, I've had the best rodeos and kept them for so many years as anybody could ever want. The great Reno Rodeo that we're honoring here today, the Cow Palace, San Francisco all these years, Hayward, Cecil Jones, and all of them. Nephi, Utah, one of my best little not indoor, outdoor rodeos, 8,000 people fill it every night, do a great job. The Raleigh Cattle Call, and of course Las Vegas NFR, and of course Pastor Ogles, where my son Julio put a rodeo on last night, the Mid-State Fair, and Pete Clark, Ranchero Buddy Jack, and Randy Bernard. I have to fly back there tonight because they're going to do some things for me tonight. So I've had a great lot of rodeos, along with the Barstow Rodeo that started up new, and they've been a great thing in my aspiration. One thing I'd like to say about the rodeo business and what I've tried to do, I've been pretty controversial along with Neil Gay throughout the last few years. But one thing about Neil Gay and myself, I think we've tried to give more back to the rodeo than we took out of it. And I always tried when I was judging and when I was furnishing the stock contractor to treat the newcomer just as well as I did the champion cowboy. Give them all a fair shot, let them all win what they could win, and believe it, beyond that, more than that was my duty to the spectator. I felt like that if we're going to grow in rodeo like we need to grow and we should grow, then we have to keep the paying customer happy. With our contract acts and our Wild West things that sometimes I've been criticized about, we tried to make rodeo the best damn family entertainment in the world. With doing that, it took my family to do that. All my children have been in rodeo. My father and mother supported me years ago. All my family is here from Long Beach, brothers and sisters. And of course, my lovely wife, Karen, believe it or not, Bob said something about her a while ago, but you know the rodeo business is tough on wives. And she's outlasted all the other wives. 17 years. 17 years she's put up with me. And I owe an awful awful lot to her and my lovely daughter Catherine right there that's starting their mutton bust now, and she's starting barrel racing. She's 6 years old, so man, I'm back. Well, I had Cindy out of the barrel race, and now I got her in it. But without the Rutherford family, Jack and his wife Janet and Philip and Maxine and Tom, Kurt, and of course Ed and Barbara, we couldn't have had all these things. They gave us the money to finance and do all these wonderful things for the NFR, these wonderful things for rodeo, and I'm glad I was able to do a part of them, because I feel like that in looking at other stock contractors and other rodeos around the country, maybe a lot of them have picked up on some of the ideas, and maybe we've made our rodeos and maybe their rodeos better to where we can be #1 in the world. I thank the Rutherfords, and they've done a great thing for us, keeping us alive, and I just think it's great. When I look down the front row here, I see Jack Ward, our inductee, who is a good, I don't know about his bull riding, but he's a hell of a bareback rider. And of course, next to him, TJ isn't being inducted today, but I think of him when he got his pilot's license, and then when he was on kettle drums and drug all around the arena. That was his worst day, there at Omaha, Nebraska, when he hung up on kettle drums. And of course, Ellen Backstrom, we were at a rodeo at Sells, Arizona. They didn't trust Ellen to handle the money. The Indians did. So Ellen gave the money to the Indians, went out and timed the rodeo. Lo and behold, they had the 2 Indian guards and the secretary. They started the fight outside the Indian office. All the Indians ran out, and the Indian thief ran in and stole all the money. So they'd have been better off they let Ellen handle the money. And of course, when I'm getting going too fast, but I think of Chuck Henson. God, what a character. He'd fall down the arena and make everybody happy. But the one year he was so great was at Long Beach when he had the Sag of the West Jack. He was riding in the back of the wagon. We were running the wagon around the arena. He had the shotgun. And little Rusty in the movies got into the sauce that Jim Beam that much tonight. Tipped the wagon over. Out went Chuck through the wagon. Wrecked the California Beef Council wagon. Chuck came out of the wagon unscratched with his shotgun. That was the theory how we started rolling the wagon. The other thing was, Ogden Pioneer days, we're going to bulldog on a motorcycle. Remember that, Chuck? Man, Chuck's the best bulldogger on the back of a motorcycle you ever saw until the Hazer turned the steer in front of the motorcycle. And you know what happened then? We were out there with wrenches taking Chuck's legs and arms out from the spokes when he tangled up. It was the damnedest wreck I ever seen. The steer got off unscathed, but here Chuck was. We had to take wrenches and tools to get him unlocked out of the wheels of that motorcycle. But of course, Fritz Truan, when I was 8 years old at Long Beach Rodeo, Fritz and Sack McGuigan said, Cotton, would you watch our bronc saddles? And I said, you bet. I sat right there and watched their bronc saddles. And they were the ones that got me started in the rodeos at Long Beach, Fritz Truman, and it was a great year in my life. I guess that's about all I have to say, but I want to thank everybody here. I want to thank the committee for selecting me, and I have more stories to tell about Larry Mahan and Ty Murray and the rest of them, but I better close. And Rick Path, great people, but I want to close with one thing in mind, that when I ride into that grand entry, that when the sun goes down at Ogden to these rodeos and the band starts playing, and I ride in, they play the national anthem, and that hill comes, the sun goes over the hill. It's the greatest achievement to me in the world to ride around on a white horse. Used to be, now it's a paint horse or a black horse. The commissioner wants me to ride a quarter horse. But anyways, we go around the arena and I have those people cheering. And when that show's over, the show's over, and I ride around and they play thank you very much and we shake everybody's hand. I'm the luckiest guy in the world, and I do have $1 million worth of memories, and I thank you for your time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have brought you the class of 1995. The names are Fritz Truin all around, Ellen Backstrom contract personnel, Chuck Henson contract personnel, Jack Ward bareback, Brad Germanson Saddlebrunt, and Cotton Rosser stock contractor. Two of the inducting class, induction today, were not able to be with us. I would ask you to rise at this time and remove cover in honor of Fritz Truan and Ellen Backstrom for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. It's my pleasure today, on behalf of the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association and its Board of Directors, the ProRodeo Hall of Fame and its Board of Trustees, and the Selection Committee, which many of those members are here today. It's my pleasure to officially say to you, and from this day forward, these ladies and gentlemen are Hall of Famers. They will always be known Hall of Famers, and we officially induct them into the Hall of Fame this afternoon. Congratulations. Our best wishes to you. If you will bear with us for just a moment or two, we'd just like to bring to your attention our groundbreaking ceremony.